Popcorn. Oh, hi, Mom. No, Mom, I can't talk right now. I'm at a movie. I'm watching A Quiet Place. I said I'm watching A Quiet Place. God damn it, American moviegoers. Shut the fuck up when the actual feature starts. Okay, I got that venting out of the way. Honestly, that was about the first 10 minutes of this movie was people just, I guess, settling in, because God help you, the previews don't already help you settle into the experience. So there was a lot of environmental sound taking place within the first 10 minutes of this movie, which isn't the movie's fault. It isn't a strike against the movie for me, but it definitely hampered the viewing experience when you have a movie called A Quiet Place, which the gimmick of it is it relies on very minimal amount of sound to kind of propel the suspense, and you're immediately taken out of that suspense when the person's phone alarm goes off next to you. That's why during all that pre-screening shit and all the previews for the stuff that you laugh your stupid asses off at, that's your time to get all that stuff out of the way with regards to being quiet. Just remember that, people. All right. Let's actually talk about the movie. Let's actually talk about A Quiet Place. When I first saw trailers for this, I was very intrigued to see what John Krasinski could do with this material. This is him starring in and directing the movie with his wife, Emily Blunt. The premise you've probably picked up from the trailers is that it follows this family who's living in this world. I believe the actual date for it is 2020, 2021. They see it on like a grave marker at one point. But apparently, from what you gather from all the surrounding materials, like news articles he's posted up in his house and things like that, is that some sort of invasion happened to the planet where these creatures started attacking everybody. And basically the gimmick is that these creatures are very, very adept when it comes to picking up sound, and that like the smallest like noise they'll be able to pinpoint your location and swoop in and maul you to death, essentially. So it follows this family. Krasinski and Blunt are a husband and wife, and they have their litter of kids, one of whom is hearing impaired. So, I mean, I think she's completely deaf. I think maybe the actress is actually hearing impaired as well. I'm not quite sure. I'll have to look into that, or comment below and let me know, because I just wanted to dive into the video review and not do any research whatsoever. So it follows this family as they basically try to get on with their lives in this world where if you make a sound, you will be hunted down by these creatures. Based off of the trailer, it really was reminding me a lot of It Comes at Night, where it's not so much about addressing the global issue. They're not trying to Independence Day this scenario. It's really just down at the bottom ground with all the common folk, and it's just about this one family just trying to stay alive in this environment. I really dug that in It Comes at Night with the way they set up that family's dilemma and the kind of claustrophobic and paranoid feel you got from that particular movie. So I was curious to see what they would do with this particular premise. And I must say that it sets up its world and its rules and environment pretty well. I really did dig the first 45 minutes of this movie, where you're basically just getting a sense of what this family's life is like with regards to how do they function in this world without relying upon sound. They've taken to kind of makeshift sign language and really just talking very as well as all the little details they have to put into their everyday, goings-ons in order to function around here. Like all the paths to and from the places on their farm or to and from locations for them are covered in sand, so you can't hear the footsteps. Emily Blunt, at one point in this movie, it's revealed that she is almost about ready to give birth to another child, and all the preparation they go in order to make that possible, such as like soundproofing this box to be a makeshift crib for the kid, having oxygen at the ready for the kid, so if the baby starts to cry or wail, they can sedate it a little bit, and then they can just put it in this box that's soundproof while it's screaming. Hell of a way to grow up, I'm sure. And you really get a sense too of the family dynamics in this household. There's sort of a very strained relationship between John Krasinski and his eldest daughter in this movie, the one who is hearing impaired, because of a tragedy that occurred in, again, the first 10 minutes of the movie. The daughter feels responsible for something that occurred, and I'm guessing due a lot to the fact that John Krasinski can't just out and say it, and he has a hard time communicating it to her that, you know, he doesn't blame her or that he loves her and so forth, but the relationship is very tense, and to see that play out on just the actors' faces and in their gestures without the accompaniment of out loud dialogue, it is really, really well done. The performances across the board, I feel, are really concise and very effective. You can tell John and Emily are married in real life and that they must be very happily married, hopefully. Knock on wood in the way Hollywood marriages go, but they do have a really good chemistry with each other, and you know, there's a lot of love between them and so forth, and a lot of doting on one another. His relationship with his daughter and his son, like I said, are very well developed, and they each have their own little moments to kind of spend time with him and develop that bond even further. I was making fun when this trailer first dropped that it was just going to be a whole movie dedicated to John Krasinski's Jim face. He's really stone cold in this movie at times when he has to be. He gets intense, and you can read it in just his eyes and in his demeanor and the way he carries himself. Emily Blunt is a marvel in this movie. She has to work so much with just facial expression, with having to cry like that, but not give into like the wailing like fits that you can get into when you have a good cry. There are points in this movie where if it was anyone else, you would have screamed your head off. There was at one point she steps on a nail in the staircase as she's walking down a staircase, and anybody else, I would have wailed my head off. I was almost ready to wail my head off when I saw it happen, because it is, even for a PG-13, it's pretty, it can get intense. And so when moments like that happen in really tense situations, and you can feel just the anxiety clutch onto these characters, the fact that you see them emote all of this and channel all of this through purely just performance and not dialogue, it is pretty impressive. It is really a sight to behold, especially with Emily Blunt. Like I said, she gets a lot of really tense moments. For a woman who's about to give birth without an epidural, yeah, that might be stretching our imagination a little bit with regards to, oh yeah, she's not going to scream her head off when this contraction hits, but you can tell like she's in pain. The kid actors in this, they are surprisingly really effective too. I really like the performances that the daughter and the son convey here. The daughter especially has a lot to kind of wrestle with due to the fact that it is an interesting twist and an interesting angle on it that she is already hearing impaired, because the entire time you're kind of wondering like how frustrating that must be for her, because of the fact that she already can't hear, but also she has no idea like perception of like sound and how it can carry when she say drops something. She has no, she really doesn't have an idea of like if that's going to be just a small sound or if it's going to be a great sound. You have a sense that kind of plays on the character's worry from time to time. It's established pretty well in the beginning of the film as to why, but again, her interactions with Krasinski are really good, because Krasinski's always trying to make new hearing aids for her, and at one point she just has a breakdown moment. It's like, I don't want to do this anymore. It never works. It'll never work. What's the point? Even like, what's the point of having that hearing aid if there's no sound to really enjoy? Because if you enjoy the sound, you're dead. The little details they set up in this world, not just with how they go about trying to perform certain tasks without sound, but also you get a sense a little bit of some kind of community, that it's not quite as isolating as it comes at night, but you get a sense. There's one scene where there's some sort of society kind of sort of almost holding on here. John Krasinski goes up to his water tower or grain silo at one point in the film, and they have kind of a bonfire going up there. I guess it reminded me a lot of the lighting of the towers in The Return of the King, that one scene, because then all of a sudden you see a lot of little distant fires start to flicker on in throughout the hilly areas, and so you're like, okay, so there are other people out there. While that was a cool kind of sense of like, okay, it's not just them isolated, I did more enjoy it when it was honed in on just this farm and just on this family. It can really present a lot of cool claustrophobic or really suspenseful, tense moments, especially when it does go close to deathly quiet. The one thing I did appreciate about this movie is that it didn't just completely throw out all the sound for the sake of throwing out all the sound. Like, you can still hear some stuff. Like, you can hear them whenever they're walking on the sand. That it's not loud and declarative, of course, but it's like a soft, like crunching and things like that. As they're going about their tasks and chores, there are little sounds here and there, but I guess it's when it's really clamorous or really bombastic type of sounds that you want to kind of avoid. So when you do have a very bombastic or declarative type of sound take place in this movie, it is very jarring. It does border on jump scare territory a little bit, but at least it's earned with regards to this premise. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden, booga booga booga, for no reason. A big sound happens in this movie. It is telegraphed pretty well. It is a setup and established pretty well. Yeah, even the opening sequence is a good kind of indicator for the type of scares you're in for. Is there stuff that doesn't really work? A little bit. I can almost forgive it with this movie because I understand it is a wide release. If this was more of an indie film, if this was meant more for, say, a streaming service, like if this was exclusive to Netflix, I could see them handling this premise a little bit differently. But since this is being widely distributed and since it also is being produced by Platinum Dunes, which is Michael Bay's production company, I can understand why they would want to make it a little bit more, I guess, accessible to the widespread dumb American viewing audience. For a movie called A Quiet Place, as much as I was talking about, like, I like their minimal use of sound, there are points where I'm like, we really don't need a soundtrack or a score to accompany this. Almost every time you see one of the creatures or you sense one of the creatures is about ready to enter the scene, it always gives this loud the Nolan horns. Every time you see a cockroach-like foot or you hear the predator-like clicks of this creature, it's immediately accompanied by that horn blare. How much more effective, how much creepier would these scenes be without that declarative theme or motif accompanying these creatures all the time? At times I was really kind of hoping there wouldn't be a score. I was really hoping that the score would be very downplayed. There are moments where it works. Like I said, that bonfire scene where he's lighting the fire on top of the silo and stuff, and it's just a quiet scene. There's a bit of a score underlying it, and it's a very kind of contemplative and emotionally resonant type of melody. That's fine. I didn't have a problem so much with that, but like every time these creatures, the creature's almost there because you hear that wah. Take that stuff out and I guarantee you I would have gotten a much more visceral, much more stressed out reaction to whenever these creatures make their appearances. Another thing that really didn't work for me so much in the movie was I was really hoping it would follow It Comes at Night with regards to a certain formula in that there's no solution in the end. Now what I mean by that is it's not like, oh, well, they solved the world's problems at the end of the movie. No. They're still very much living in that world. But they throw in a MacGuffin. I will give them this. At least that's set up. It's not like M. Night Shyamalan did a twist at the end and I'm like, oh, all of a sudden this is what we need to combat these critters. But I was kind of hoping that it wouldn't become an overly reliant gimmick as the movie was coming towards its conclusion. Because as much as I was getting like a lot of good emotional payoff on a lot of the characters towards the end of this movie, the movie kind of ends almost setting it up for a sequel, which I really hope they don't. I hope they just leave it on this big ambiguous like, well, I hope that works out. But the gimmick plays into that a little bit because now it's kind of like, okay, we've discovered what this is and how it can have an effect on these creatures. Fuck safety. Let's just throw safety to the wind. Now we're taking the fight to them type of thing. I don't know. I didn't really like that choice they made with the end of the movie. I would have felt a little bit more fulfilled, or I would have had a more fulfilling experience probably if they had just kind of been like, okay, that's one day down. See you guys next time. I understand why they would do that. Because again, this is a movie being put out there for the wide general audience, and a lot of the wide general audience doesn't want to see movies like It Comes at Night, where it ends on a pretty bleak note. Not saying that this movie needed to end on a very bleak note at all, but I definitely didn't want that kind of like, okay, well, here's that Hollywood kind of solution twist here thrown into the mix. Everything's gonna be ultimately okay for our characters, even if it doesn't look like it's okay. I really didn't want that, but I know the general audience needs to kind of feel some kind of good feeling towards the end of a movie like this. You hear about it from a lot of other reviewers like Red Letter Media and things like that, talking about how modern day horror movies, they have to end with that jump scare so they don't let the gravity or the reality of the horrible stuff you witness actually sink in. They got to give you that one last blah in order to just make you laugh and be like, oh, that trifle of a horror movie, instead of actually making you think like, Jesus, this is kind of dour. It's kind of equivalent to that. Overall, I really would recommend you checking out the movie. It has a great atmosphere. It establishes a lot of really cool and strong character dynamics that you invest in because the performances are just that effective. And again, without relying on dialogue for a majority of the film, it is really well executed, I feel. There's just some issues here and there with regards to it being made more accessible to the general audience that I feel kind of hamper the experience for me personally. Maybe check it out in a theater that has next to no people in it though, because those first 10 minutes were a bit of a trial for me. I know I'm harping on it quite a bit. It was the ultimate ironic and frustrating part of the movie, was that you're going to a movie called A Quiet Place, where again, the whole hook of it is to soak up more of the atmosphere without it being reliant on sound. And a majority of your audience is just the absolute worst theater going experience you want to have at a movie like this. So if you're gonna go watch it, either watch it when there's next to no people in the theater with you, or I would recommend, you know, watching this at home on your own when it eventually maybe makes it onto Netflix or Amazon, or you can rent it. Turn the lights out and make sure you have a big screen and that you have the speakers drawn up to 11, certainly. A Quiet Place is a pretty enjoyable ride, and it goes by pretty fast, but not like I was checking my watch waiting for it to be over type fast. I really was like, oh my gosh, it's over. So, thank you very much. Jeff Krasinski in blood. Put it in a quiet place. Make more films like this. Loud!